Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 10th of January 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Once again, we'll be focusing on CES since it is by far the biggest source of news at the moment. In keeping with the last couple of days' episodes, this will be a single topic episode. We're going to be focusing on the newly announced Razer Edge gaming tablet. Razer's Project Fiona has become the Razer Edge tablet. The concept design that was shown at last year's CES has now been nailed down as the Razer Edge, which is a 10.1-inch Windows 8 tablet. Now the question is, what does it have inside and what can it do? Well, the base version features an i5 processor, as well as 4GB of DDR3 RAM and a 64GB SSD. It also happens to have an NVIDIA 640MLE GPU, which is a fairly low-power mobile GPU. The upgraded version contains an i7 processor, which is reported to be a dual-core as opposed to a quad-core, 8GB of DDR3 RAM, and anywhere between 128 and 256GB of SSD space, with a price tag of around $1,300. Optional accessories include a $99 television dock, which has an HDMI 1.4 port, of course allowing you to plug the machine into your television and use it as a console, Steambox, or media device. It also includes 3 USB ports as well as mic in and stereo out for a total of $99. And the PlayStation Move style controller, which was featured as a permanent attachment to the Project Fiona prototype, is now an optional case for $249, including dual analog sticks, full face buttons, as well as force feedback. Other accessories such as an extended battery and a keyboard add-on will also be available. The tablet runs on a full version of Windows 8, allowing what is essentially a PC experience. And let's be honest, this thing is a PC. One way or the other, it is a tablet PC, but that does not make it any less of a PC. However, as you can imagine, upgrading the components is not an option. Razer claims that they spent the last year optimizing the system based on gamer feedback, which included the inclusion of the powerful processor, as well as the ability to run Battlefield 3, which was considered a benchmark for this mobile device. Based on various actual real-world benchmarks using the GT640MLE, Battlefield 3 is in fact playable at a reasonable resolution just above 720p, utilizing medium settings. At medium settings, Battlefield would run somewhere between 24 and 28 frames per second. At low, it actually runs around 40 on average, which is of course playable. Other benchmarks include Guild Wars 2, which runs on low settings at around 50 frames per second, at high more like 26. Also Max Payne 3 at medium settings around 30 frames per second, Dirt Showdown at medium settings 55 frames per second, Diablo 3 at medium settings 65 frames per second, and Skyrim averaging out at around 34 frames per second on medium detail. These are based on benchmarks done over at notebookcheck.net. Bear in mind, of course, there are a couple of additional things to consider. Firstly, the benchmarks provided on pretty much every website are based on a number of laptop computers, and for the most part, these would be running while plugged into a power source. Now, in my experience, when I've utilized a gaming laptop, like say the one I have, the G73, which has a 460M in the actual machine, which is somewhat more powerful than the card that's been listed here. The actual card has not run at full capacity while under battery operated mode. It does require you to plug the whole thing in. Now, it is of course possible that the 640M LE does not in fact have such a large power requirement, ergo you would be able to run it on the battery at full capacity. The other concern would be as to whether or not the CPU ends up actually dragging this thing down. Now, this seems to be significantly less likely. I've had a look at the technical specs on Razer's Own. It doesn't tell you exactly which CPU it is. However, after a little bit of research, I can determine that the most likely candidate would be the Ivy Bridge i7-3517U, which is an ultra-low power CPU with a 17-watt power requirement. That also would happen to run at the clock speed of 1.9 GHz, which matches up quite nicely, and it does use the Intel HD Graphics 4000, so that seems to be the most likely possibility, as it does match up very much so with the specs on the website. Although whether or not it is actually that CPU has yet to be revealed. It does seem that it's very, very likely indeed. Now, it is possible to find benchmarks of that. It's also possible to look at some of the competition based around those kind of specs. Now, if we were to look at the high-end tablet as opposed to the lower end, which of course uses the i5, which still very well might be a viable purchase, then we can compare it to something like, say, the Samsung Series 5 Ultrabook, which uses exactly the same CPU. What it doesn't have is the actual graphics card. That thing runs on the Intel HD Graphics 4000. Now, if you want to know how much that Ultrabook costs, then that's $1,174 on average. Considering that the Razer Edge actually has a graphics card of its own on board, that, surprisingly enough, makes the Razer Edge Pro's cost quite competitive with modern Ultrabooks. Which is a rather curious conclusion, isn't it? Because up to this point, what I've been reading about this device is that the thing is far, far too expensive for what it is, and that people won't actually buy it. And yet, when I compare it to the price of equivalent power Ultrabooks, what I'm clearly seeing is that it's actually surprisingly similar, and yet those Ultrabooks do not include an independent graphics card, and do not, of course, have the tablet functionality. Intriguing. So, is this thing actually viable? Is it any good? Well, the first big concern I'd have with it is the fact that the bloody thing is costly, of course. Now, I did just say that it's comparable, but that's without any of the accessories, such as the double capacity battery, which will set you back a little bit. The most expensive thing is actually the controller case, and that alone just boggles my mind as to why that thing actually costs over $200. I don't get it. I absolutely do not understand why this would be the case. That's insanity. That is straight up nuts. There is no controller on the market that costs that much. Hell, even the Razer Hydra, which was a very limited release controller designed solely for use with Portal 2, didn't cost that much, and that had full motion control, similar to the PlayStation Move. So, why exactly they're trying to charge over $200 for the control case beggars belief. Secondly, my biggest concern has got to be the weight of the thing. Now, in a hands-on with Ars Technica, they indicated that the tablet on its own only weighs about 25% more than an iPad. That's a pretty reasonable amount. An iPad doesn't actually weigh all that much, and this thing obviously is packing quite the punch and power. However, when you add the controller case to it, it would appear that the tablet weighs significantly more, and the guys who got the hands on at Ars Technica indicated that it was uncomfortable and too heavy for extended periods of use. Now, that is, of course, a little bit of a concern, to say the least. I also have concerns about the battery life of the unit, as well as any potential underclocking to the components that would be done in order to extend said battery life and would make the machine less powerful than its specs would indicate. And also cooling issues. I have to say, the design itself would appear to have some kind of vents on the back of it, but honestly, I have to wonder just how much cooling it has. Does it actually have a fan within it? How large is the fan? How effective is the cooling itself? Could you, in fact, use this for extended periods without the bloody thing overheating? A lot of concerns. However, I also have quite a few positive things to say about this. Firstly, this to me seems like an ideal purchase for someone looking to get an Ultrabook style system with optional gaming functionality. Now, you don't really buy an Ultrabook to play games on. It's not really what it's designed for. The Ultrabook is, for those who don't know, a specific kind of form factor for laptops. It's quite recent. It's designed to be ultra light. And it's still fairly powerful. It's not a netbook. It's a compromise between a power user's laptop and a netbook, and hopefully is designed to give it a lot of portability and make it much, much easier to travel with. What we've seen very recently is an attempt to create a hybrid product, which is an Ultrabook but also a tablet. It's essentially convertible, right? If you think about it, the way that your standard laptop is designed is that all of the big components are actually in the bottom. Yeah, they're where the keyboard is. That's the actual main part of your traditional laptop. That's where your CPU is, that's where your motherboard is, that's where your graphics card is, so on and so forth. So if you were able to move those components up into the screen, then that means that the keyboard itself could actually be detached. finished and you wouldn't need it anymore. What does that do? It means that the thing weighs significantly less and is less bulky and takes up more space, and it allows you to hold it in your hands. It ceases to become a laptop, it actually becomes a tablet. Now, there's an increasing number of devices that are essentially becoming both, especially when you can use a tablet as a makeshift laptop by getting a keyboard case for it, and there are increasing numbers of these products on the market. You can do the same thing with the Razer Edge. You could also, of course, just use a traditional keyboard because this thing has USB ports and allows you to do just that. Hell, you could use this as a PC by simply plugging in a monitor if you so desire, but you also have the totally portable experience. Then what you have, which is an edge over every other tablet on the market, is a setup which allows you to play proper games. Now, this is twofold. Firstly, it's because it's got the power to do it. I don't know of a tablet on the market, in fact, I'm pretty sure there isn't one that has this kind of power. It just doesn't happen. I know of an i5 tablet, but I don't know of one that actually has a graphics card that powerful on board that would actually work for modern PC gaming. Secondly, it gets around the user interface problem by having this controller case. Admittedly, the thing is bloody expensive, and I hope against hope that they actually lower the price, because that's just ridiculous. And this allows you to play a proper game on the go, which seems to be the theme lately. You remember the episode that I did about the Nvidia Shield? If not, I suggest that you go and watch that. The idea was that Android games suck because you can't have traditional controls. It's designed for a touchscreen, and most traditional games don't work well with a touchscreen. So if you introduce a controller, then things tend to get an awful lot better. Now, in this case, you don't even have to worry about the notion that Android is hopefully going to provide traditional games for you. You don't have to, because it's just a PC. This is what you're going to understand. This thing is a PC. It is a tablet PC. It has a full version of Windows. It has a proper CPU. It has the proper architecture. It has memory. It's got storage. It's got a graphics card. You can run your Steam games. You can run your anything on it. Now, you can do that with a laptop, but unlike a laptop, you can take this thing and use it as a tablet, and you can hold it in your hands with a controller. Alternatively, you could just plug in a controller and just use it as the screen in the processing unit. The thing actually has a lot of different options, and that's what really impresses me about it. I don't really know of any device that I would consider to be this flexible when it comes to gaming. You're talking about a tablet, and a console, and a handheld console, and a Steam box, and a media center, and a makeshift Ultrabook. And it does all of those things, assuming you have the appropriate accessories, and it's highly portable. This is good. This is very, very good, potentially. But of course, they are, without question, pricing themselves out of several markets. Will it end up being used by anyone? How many people are actually going to buy it? Well, to me, it seems like the biggest demographic is someone going off to college or university. Since this thing can do so many different things, it can be a tablet, it can be a portable media center, it can be a games console, it can be a handheld gaming device, and it can be an Ultrabook, then it seems like buying this for someone who's going off to university or college is actually really smart, because instead of having a laptop and an iPad and a 360, you just got this thing, and it does all of that. Now, I'm by no means saying that you need a laptop, an iPad, and a 360 to survive freaking college. Don't be ridiculous. All of these are luxury items, but if you are going to invest in what is considered to be a luxury item, you might as well get one that will do multiple things. I'm interested to see the performance on it, honestly. I would like to put this thing through its paces. If the specs are to be believed, and there is no sneaky underclocking or obvious heat problems that really drag the system down, then it is super impressive. The notion that you could play Dishonored on this thing. Dishonored on a handheld. Am I the only one who's amazed by the very notion of this? I think I'm just getting too old, clearly. At the age of 28, I'm getting too old, because I remember handhelds when I was a little kid. Yes, the time when we had to go uphill both ways in the snow just for a piece of bread, and so on and so forth. I remember Game & Watch, for God's sake. I remember being really impressed by getting my first Game & Watch, which was Mario's Cement Factory. And now I can play Dishonored on a handheld. This is insanity. It really, really is. I think this thing's just got a massive ton of potential. It actually excites me a lot the more I think about it, looking at the specs and looking at the possibilities. I would almost consider replacing my G73 with this. And the reason being that it weighs so much less. I can use this thing comfortably on a plane. I can't use a gaming laptop on a plane. Have you ever flown on a plane? You ever tried to fit a 17-inch screen gaming laptop on the tray table, or even any decent-sized laptop? It just doesn't work. It's terrible. It's incredibly uncomfortable, not to mention the fact that it nukes your battery in about an hour. If Razer actually pull this off, which is questionable, I mean, come on. This is really one of their few little saunters into the idea of building a PC. They built the concept Switchblade, which never really got anywhere. They did build a laptop, goes by the name of the Razer Blade, and it's goddamn expensive and underpowered for what it is. And yet, somehow, even with this cost, this actually ends up being competitive with mid-range Ultrabooks. The fact that they managed to do that, and yet also put all of the components in the size of a tablet, boggles my mind. There must be something, there's got to be a catch. Is it heat problems, battery problems, just ergonomics in general? I don't know, but I'm really curious to find out. This is an incredibly exciting time to be a PC gamer. We just had 3 big announcements from 3 big companies regarding PC gaming hardware. The notion that you can now take PC gaming anywhere. It's making PC gaming easier, it's making it more accessible, it's making it more desirable. These are all incredibly good things for PC gaming. Ridiculously good things for PC gaming. And there is no magic stick that will allow us to spread PC gaming to a huge audience and defeat the console rabble and so on and so forth. We don't want to defeat the console rabble because competition is important. If there was no competition to PCs, then we would be in trouble. But if there are a variety of devices that do all of these cool things, and people actually have a choice, as opposed to with a console where they do not, they either buy the console or they don't get to play those games, then we are in for a fun ride over the next few years. This thing looks pretty good. I don't view it as gimmicky at all. There's too much power behind it for this to be a gimmick. There's too much that this thing can do for it to be considered a gimmick. You can consider the Nvidia Shield and its streaming ability to be a little bit gimmicky, but a straight-up Windows 8 tablet PC with the power of a mid-range Ultrabook designed with gamers in mind, that's a good thing. That's something we should be seriously considering. That's something that we should be thinking, well, I might actually use that. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, and I will see you next time.